It's just after 7 o'clock, so we will call ourselves to order and have a roll call.
Brandon Bowersox.
Present.
Gary Engelgau. Susan Jones. Gary Zico.
Here.
Michelle Guerra.
Here.
Audrey Ishii. Brock Rosenshine.
Here.
Morgan Johnston.
Here.
Dana Mancuso.
Here.
Jennifer Selby.
Here.
And Brian Lake.
Here.
Thanks.
And for the record, here's Audrey Ishii, so she's here as well. Okay, first, are there any additions to the agenda? I know the one is that Michelle had a grant item that we can add under the announcement time and talk some about a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Are there any other things we should add to tonight's agenda? Does somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda with that addition?
So moved.
Okay, a motion by Dana,
I'll second.
seconded by Morgan. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Great. We have next approval of minutes from our past meeting, the February 15th meeting. These were distributed by email. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Gary?
Yeah, I'd maybe like to change. Let's hear about what I said about the 20-mile speed limit. I would qualify that considering lowering the speed limit on local residential streets, not the whole city. So I like this, and local residential meaning not collector or arterial. So that's
So that would be if we in the minutes, if we added in that first sentence where it says Gary Zico would like for the city of Urbana to adopt a policy of 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, we could add the phrase on local residential streets.
yeah, that would work.
Do those words?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other suggested changes or corrections?
I move to approve as amended.
Great. Is there a second? Okay, Barack. Any other corrections or changes? All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Was there anyone here from the public tonight to address us? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to 3 items of new business. The first is about the parking impact of bike lanes, and Jennifer Selby is here to take it away.
Okay, everybody have that up on their screen, the picture there? Okay, I'm going to go through each of the streets in no real particular order. Bradley Avenue, we are planning on doing bike lanes from the city limits, which of Champaign-Urbana, which is in here somewhere, over to Lincoln Avenue. So over to here is Lincoln Avenue with the gas station here, and I think it used to be called Melrose Apartments. You can see in the photo, and I'm sure if you've driven in the street, you realize that the Lincoln to Goodwin Avenue section really just looks like a really wide street, and there's 52 spaces on the north side, and then 11 plus 3 plus 3 plus 17 spaces on the south side, plus 2 there. So we are planning to remove the south side parking and keep the north side parking. I think we could all agree that removing those spaces isn't going to be a big impact. Nobody parks there. That Melrose, I don't think it's called Melrose anymore, Campus Connection, or I think it's called One North. It's fenced in, and so those students aren't parking there, and then there's that big lagoon thing and the gas station, so nobody's parking there. So then we're really looking more at this section from Romine Street to Goodwin Avenue. There are, 31 spaces on the north side there, and 25 spaces on the south side. And I think this picture must have been flown on a Sunday, because this is a church here, and I have noticed that when I drive down Bradley on a Sunday that there actually are cars parked out here. So these 4 cars that are parked on the south side maybe have to move down here to the other side of this church parking lot, but I don't think that this is going to be a major loss for this block. So the spaces removed would be 61, all the way from Romine to Lincoln, and the spaces that remaining would be 83. And they would all remain on the north side. Any questions on Bradley? Yep.
No. Will there be a bike lane on both sides?
A bike
of
lane
the
on both
street?
sides. We always do a bike lane on both sides.
But you said you were only removing cars on one side.
There's enough room. That road is so wide that we only have to remove parking on one side to get 2 bike lanes and 2 lanes of traffic. The other thing I guess I wanted to mention was that these bike lanes would likely be implemented with a Champaign project. Champaign is kind of in their moving forward plan had a road diet on Bradley, because once you get into Champaign, there's 4 lanes of traffic, and then they have those 2 stops, 4-way stops. And they were considering doing a road diet there and doing bike lanes. So whenever they would do that, that's probably when we would do bike lanes. And as far as I know, Champaign doesn't have that in their plans anytime soon. So there's no rush to do the bike lanes there.
But if you were to resurface this,
If we were to resurface it, we would probably do the bike lanes at that time.
Okay.
Right. But I don't think that it's planned to be resurfaced anytime soon either. Okay, Fairview Avenue. I guess I'm kind of moving from the north side of the city to the south side. Fairview goes right in front of King School, so we're talking about from Goodwin, and this is King here, over to, again, Lincoln Avenue here. And I actually have a plan sheet for that. Let's pull that up a little bit. This, we would move the parking on the north side, and there's only parking on the north side. And there's no parking allowed on the south side. Let me pull back this one. So there are 2 spaces here. There are 4. I'm sorry. There's 2 right here. I'm starting at Goodwin. There's 2 between Goodwin and the pull off here for King. Then there's 4 to the east of King, and then there's no parking here to the corner. And then you can fit 3 in here, and then 2, 2, 3, and legally 1, but I highly doubt that anybody would park right there with the driveway and the taper. So we're talking about 17 parking spaces. You can see from the photo that nobody's parked there right now. Now I can tell you that if you drove by there tomorrow, this would all be parked full. But that is because King is undergoing an expansion right now. And the teachers normally park in the parking lot here on the west side, and they're going to relocate the entrance to the north side of the school and put a new parking lot in. And because that's all closed right now, all the teachers are parking on the street. They're also going to convert this bump-in area. This is where the buses pull now. That will not be a bus pull-off anymore, and that will be converted to parallel parking, because this will no longer be the main entrance to the school. Yeah, just parallel parking. So as of next school year, I mean this year, but in the fall of this year, the demand for this parking will greatly be reduced, because all the parents will be coming up to the north side of the school to enter in the new main entrance. We did apply for a Safe Routes to School grant for that, which is, oops, wrong one, which is what this plan sheet is. So starting at Goodwin, we'd have the bike route that would be on Goodwin, the bike lanes end, and this would show you what that parking would look like. We'd have no parking this side of street signs, and the bike lanes would go on down to, that's Harvey, and then the bike lanes would stop short just of Lincoln Avenue, and then we'd have the sharrows with the bikes may use full lane, and then when you cross Lincoln, it's a bike route. So 17 parking spaces, all on the north side. There would be no parking now on Fairview from Goodwin to Lincoln. Okay, the next one is Green Street. And I guess on timing for that, we would find out hopefully late this summer if we get that Safe Routes to School grant. And if we would get it, then we would proceed with the Traffic Commission, similar to what we did with Race in Washington and Philo. We had 2 traffic commission meetings, an open public meeting, and I went to city council at least once, if not twice. So we would start that whole process to remove that parking. And maybe it would be constructed next year, but it's federal funding, so I don't know. It depends on if and when we would get the grant. Okay, Green Street is from Lincoln Avenue, so basically the edge of campus. This is Hendrick House and the 2 gas stations. And that would go all the way to Ray Street into downtown Urbana, with the library being here and the Lincoln Hotel being here. Currently, there's only parking on the north side of the street, and there are 44 parking spaces on the north side. There is no parking on the south side. But I think there's been a lot of discussion with previous councils, and I believe with the current council, and I think the current council is a little more inclined to actually do this project, is to make what they call a town gown connection. So try to connect the downtown to the campus. And this Green Street is just a perfect location to get students to walk and bike to campus. It's such a short distance. And if it were a little more attractive, maybe we could get that connection and get the students downtown. So the parking would have to be removed on the north side. There's no parking on the south side. And then that would make the space for the bike lanes. And this would be part of a much larger project. The street is falling apart. It'd probably be a complete reconstruction of the street, resurfacing, possibly new curb and gutter, maybe widening the sidewalk on one side, or at least very similar to what we did on Green Street on the other side just this past year, where we just did a complete reconstruction and made the sidewalk nice, at least on the one side of the street. I don't think brick sidewalks have to stay on that side, so maybe the sidewalk gets a nice treatment all the way down, and just trying to make that a real nice connection for walking and biking to downtown. So that would be a loss of 44 spaces. The people that would be impacted by that most would be the rental units that I think that's probably who's parking there the most. And that's all free parking. It's not metered. And I don't think it falls in that no parking 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. area. So it's just kind of free parking. If students want to drive there and park there and walk into campus, they can do that. But probably mostly it's going to be the rentals and then this church as well. But the church does have a parking lot. And that, this apartment complex has a big parking lot. So that would be the biggest issue there, would be the rental and the property owners that own the rental properties. But there are no immediate plans to do this project. It's kind of a very wanted project, but there's not any money for it right now. Possibly maybe the next round of transportation enhancement program funding.
Do you know where it is on the master plan schedule? The 5, 10, 15?
I think it was in the 5-year plan. And I have my master plan here. We can talk about it when we get to our next item. But yeah, it won't be happening in the 5-year.
Green Street then from Goodwin to...
No, not Goodwin, from Lincoln. So here's Lincoln. There's no parking west of Lincoln. This is the section, this is Hendrick House, this is the gas station and a gas station. So this is the more residential. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, look at this one. Yeah, look at this, this panel. There's Lincoln.
That's Lincoln.
Yeah.
Green Street from Lincoln
To Ray Street, into downtown. So this would be Ray Street. Here's the library, Timothy John, and then this is mostly rentals and apartment buildings. So that would be a loss of 44 spaces, and there would be 0 parking left on Green Street.
Just FYI, to answer your question, I had it here too. It looks like actually the portion from, it's in the 10-plus year time range.
Oh, is it?
That's
The section east of
the
Lincoln?
stretch from between Busey and Race.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, the stretch from Wright to Busey is in the 0 to 5 year, which that's a much more complicated project because it involves campus coordination,
Right.
buses and turn-ins and things. So maybe our timing there was too optimistic and too pessimistic all at the same time.
Okay, the next street is Amber Lane. So we're looking at the bottom one here. So here's Philo Road and over to Myra Ridge. And this is an old photo, but this is Meyer now. There's currently parking on the north side only, no parking on the south side. But again, from the photo and just knowing what this area is, this is a church that's set back quite a bit. I believe this is an empty lot. And then as you get further down, you have the nursing homes, which are quite a bit off. So when you get down to here, it looks like maybe there's a duplex or something. But I have 52 parking spaces on the north side. That's questionable because I believe there's a bus stop right here where these 10 spaces are. So I really don't think these 10 spaces are there. 'Cause this is the Meyer entrance.
The bus stop's at the entrance.
So there's one
I
here.
go this way, on both sides of the
and
road.
one here.
This is the way I get to into
Little
work.
Hearts and Hands.
So I drop off my daughter and then go through here, and the bus stops are right across from each other. So there's only a 10-foot gap. I wonder if there's any chance to modify that somehow eventually or whatever. But they are over here. They're between the two drives. So it's not even before that drive. They're like if you go to the entrance, the north side of the drive to Meyer,
Yeah.
the other one is directly across the street from it.
Oh, okay.
So there's like a little sidewalk there that's basically right there.
Right here.
Yeah.
Right here.
Assuming that's the current entrance to Meyer.
Yeah, I think that is. So the idea would be to remove all the parking on the north side.
I forgot. I was going to say I never see cars there. I didn't know you
I don't
could
really
park
think that
there.
there's much of a need for it there. There's already no parking on the south side, and this would just be a matter of striping bike lanes in there. And then they would connect to the Philo Road Sharrows or the Philo Road side path. And then at the opposite end, there's a side path on Myra Ridge, or they could just continue on the street on Amber Lane. As far as implementation, I'm not sure. I mean, it's possible we could do it this spring if we had the parking removed. We'd have to go to Traffic Commission in May for that. But we do have that active contract with Varsity where we're doing bike lanes. I don't know if I can get that done in the next 30 days. So I'm not sure when that will actually happen. It'd be an easy project to do, but I don't really have a time frame for that one. So that would be removing 52-ish spaces, probably less than that. Okay, the next street is Broadway Avenue from Illinois Street down to Washington Street. So this is the high school at Washington Street. And up at Illinois Street, this is Lincoln Square. And there's parking currently on both sides of the street. We would remove the parking on the west side. So the red is the parking to be removed. And we would keep the yellow on the east side. So we would remove 24 spaces, and we would keep 30 spaces. And this is, again, a situation where by removing parking on only one side, we can still get the bike lanes and 2 lanes of traffic. And this would make a connection from the downtown to the high school. Most of the impact, I would say, on to this parking would be high school students, because a lot of high school students park on Broadway Avenue. Because this is a main parking lot for students. Is that what the students? Okay. Yeah, it will be for the high school.
So what will happen to high school park?
They will have to go further out into the into the residential areas to park.
Exactly where?
They can't go to the west, because you have to have that special parking permit, right?
You can park on that little, is it Wabash between Vine and Broadway? There's that little side street and they use that parking there. But they can't.
But they can't park on like Iowa and Indiana and Michigan and all those state streets.
You can park on Michigan by the Aquatic Center and you can park over by the park, but it's all.
You can park on Race Street,
Right. Well, there's like 6 spots there.
yeah.
There's 7.
And they can park on Broadway, south of the high school.
A question, are there spaces in the lot, they're just not choosing to pay the price?
The last time I looked, they were all taken, but it just depends on the amount of kids you have driving that
Mhm.
year and how many parents. I won't pay for it, so my kid gets to school at 7:30 in the morning, so he can get a parking spot. But he parks on Michigan by the Aquatic Center, but, because the parking's probably gonna be an issue too with the construction, but probably, that's what's probably gonna be involved, so.
Right. Well, there's no timetable for this project, and the biggest impact would be the school. I do know that this section of Broadway from Illinois Street to California Street, why is that not, is in bad shape, and it needs to be resurfaced. I imagine that'll be resurfaced in the next 3, 4, 5 years because of the condition it's in. And I would imagine that if we resurface that street, that's the time that we would implement the bike lanes all the way. So I think you could probably count on those being in 5 years, unless there was a huge argument. And maybe we'll just do it in the summer when the students are gone.
Yeah, that's right. Surprise.
Then they come back to school in the fall and there's no parking. So I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, you'd see that. Next street is Kent Street, and that's the one here on the right-hand side. From Washington, this is Prairie School at the north end, and that goes all the way down to Florida Avenue. And currently, there's parking, from Florida to Vermont, there's only parking on the west side. Although right here, you can see the curb line goes in, so you can get a couple spaces in here. Then from Vermont to Pennsylvania, there's a little bit of parking on the east side. And then once you get from Pennsylvania to Michigan, there's no parking on the east side. So the road, it was built, all these different subdivisions were built, and they just weaved the road in and out. So then from Michigan all the way up to Washington, there's parking on both sides of the street. So we would keep the west side, which would be, we would remove the west side parking, so all the red, and we would keep all the yellow. So we would remove 39 spaces, and we would keep 17 spaces. And this is another project that would be done as part of the Safe Routes to School project. So this is what that might look like. This is Washington Street, and this would be the bike lanes and the new center line. And so this is all bike lanes on both sides. So then you can see, like, in this block here, that's not doing what I wanted to do. You can see that there's still parking right there. There's still parking all along here. But this is the west side, and this would be where the parking would be removed. And I can show you another plan sheet. This is as you approach Washington Street. So this is parking along this curb. This is the bike lane, vehicle lane, and then this parking is gone. As part of this Safe Routes to School grant application that we did like license plate surveys where we went out at different times of the day and wrote down what cars were parked on the street and what kind of impact it would have. And I don't have that information tabulated, but it would be something that if we would get this grant and we would go to Traffic Commission, then we would prepare a report that says that. Because I drive Kin Street every morning and every afternoon, so I would stop. And we would also do Saturdays and Sundays and evenings and mornings and daytime and all these different times to get an impact. Now, I will tell you that there is a resident on Kin Street that is very opposed to the parking removal. And I spoke to her for about 45 minutes 2 weeks ago, and she does not want the parking removed. She lives on the west side, and she does not want the parking removed. So if we did get the grant and we did have meetings, I'm sure she would be there voicing her opinion. And obviously, it would be Traffic Commission's decision at first, and then it would go to council, and then it would ultimately be council's decision whether or not to remove the parking.
How far would you have to walk?
Across the street.
What?
Across the street.
All the way across.
Her concern is that she has a large family, and that if it were, Thanksgiving or Easter or, some holiday, that all of her family wouldn't be able to park on the street. So I've written down her comments, and I'm sure that she will, and we'll let her know if we would get the grant and if we would have the meeting, let her know. We give letters to everybody, but there already is some opposition to the removing the parking on Kent Street. So that would be removing 39 spaces and keeping 17 spaces, and the bike lanes would be installed with the Safe Routes to School grant.
What's your opinion of jogging where the bike lane is if we were to remove parking if we were going to switch which side kept parking? I know you can't do it at the south end.
Right.
Would you like to make a statement for our records about why?
The reason the parking is being removed on the west side is because the west curb line stays constant, and it's the east curb line that weaves in and out. So that's one of the things that we don't like about that street is the way it weaves in and out. And if we do these bike lanes, it makes the street look more consistent. You've got this bike lane that goes all the way down the west side, 2 even lanes, and then a bike lane on the east side, and then everything else that's left over is on the other side of that bike lane. And you couldn't really switch. You couldn't keep the parking on the west side. You have to somehow switch over. There had to be some kind of taper.
Like jog, like the first street in Champaign.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just point out while this is being discussed that the first street in Champaign, that was I think it may have been the first Champaign bike lanes,
Yeah,
and
it
they
was.
shifted where the parking was back and forth. And they are going back and removing additional parking in order to straighten out those bike lanes. So it's been tested and did not work well.
And it failed.
Yeah.
Okay. Florida Avenue. Let's go to this one, I think. Florida is a big one because this goes all the way from Race Street all the way to Kent Street. So it's a huge, huge, long stretch. There's already no parking on Florida from Race to Lincoln. So here's Race Street, here's Blair Park, and I'm sorry, from Race to Vine Street. Sorry, Vine Street here. So there would be no impact there. And then when you go from Vine Street to Philo, we would plan to remove the parking on the north side, although here there's 3 spaces that get removed, and that just has to do with tapers of shifting the cars over to get around the bike lane. So we would remove the north side, which would be 52 spaces, and we would keep the south side, which would be 94 spaces. And the reason we would keep the north side, or remove the north side versus the south side, is that on the north side all these streets come through, so there's less parking on the north side because you're keeping 30 feet back from the intersections, and you've got the intersections coming through, so there's a lot more parking available on the south side, so you can see all the yellow. Now, the impact of this would be Wiley School, and according to the current principal, that's really not much of an issue. Here's Wiley. I guess I should go down to this next photo. So this is an entrance to Wiley, and parents used to be able to pull into this circle drive, and now they're not allowed to, so they're dropping their kids off right here. The principal wants everybody to be dropped off on Anderson Street, but parents are sitting here. So they could pull over and park in the bike lane and let their kids out, but a lot of them just sit there and wait for the bell to ring until their kid actually goes in the building, and that really wouldn't be allowed. But as far as teachers parking, some teachers do park here, but some of them park on the other side of the street, and there would still be ample parking on the opposite side of the street, and they can also park on Anderson. I think some are allowed to actually park up in this circle drive. So that would be all the way to Philo, which gets us to here, and then, there's no parking in this last block of Philo as you get close to the intersection. And then from Philo to Kinch, we have Florida House, and we would keep all the parking along Florida House because that is very, very heavily used for people that work and visit Florida House. But the parking on this south side would be impacted, and that is actually really heavily used too. There's also a bus stop right here, and so I think that some people are parking here and catching the bus. But a lot of these people are going to Florida House. So I could see that these 11 spaces here on the south side being contested. And then as you get down here, all these houses between Adams and James Cherry, they all back up to Florida, and they have fences. So very, very rarely would you see a car parked here. There's 35 spaces. We would keep the parking on the south side. These are apartments, and it does get parked full. So that would stay. And then as you go around the corner, there is parking, I believe, allowed on this curve. I've never seen a car parked on the curve. So we would take all the parking off the curve, and then you would continue on the south side with the removal. There'd be a couple spaces left on the north side. So from Philo to James Cherry, we would remove 54 spaces, and we would keep 25 spaces. And then from James Cherry to Curtis or Kinch, we would remove almost all of it. We would remove 48 spaces, which is all on this curve, which, like I said, it's not posted no parking, but I'm not sure that anybody actually parks there. And we would keep 2. So for that entire section from Race Street to Kinch Street, we would remove 157 spaces, and we would keep 121 spaces. So it's still a lot of parking. And I do have some plan sheets for those too. And this is Safe Routes to School again, so this is all tied to the Safe Routes to School grant. If we get the Safe Routes to School grant, then we would proceed with trying to remove the parking. So we would have Sharrows at Race Street, and then we'd have the bike lanes that would come in to Vine Street, and then here's that taper to get the cars up and around the bike lane, so that's why these couple spaces are just east of Vine Street are removed. And then you can see the bike lane is up against the curb on the north side, and then that south side parking remains. And that's all the way down, all that south side parking. And still all the parking on the south side. And then now we're approaching Philo Road. And then the bike lanes go through Philo Road and on past. The parking remains on the north side now. We were able to switch across the intersection so that the parking's on the north side. And then we switch again. We've got a little taper in here, and we switched back to the parking on the south side. But we've got plenty of room to do a nice long sweeping taper.
At that east leg of Philo,
Uh-huh.
where the center yellow hashed area, is that not 8, it's not 7 or 8 feet wide? You couldn't keep, because this is the area where you were talking about on the south side.
The yellow area?
Yeah. Would it be impossible to keep parking on both sides at that?
It has
Neck.
to do with lining up across the intersection, lining up your lanes. So the through lane is shifted up a little bit. It's getting the cars that are here across the intersection and not having too much of a jog in it. But maybe that might be possible. I don't know what that width is. Basically, that's just a paint. There's a raised median there, and we would just paint a little bit more to it. But that's possible.
I'm just wondering if it becomes a real issue.
Yeah, that might be possible.
Oh, big.
And if it was Gary's, it would be a roundabout. So that this whole thing could be not what this intersection looks like anyway. And if there was a roundabout there would be no parking because of the tapers for the roundabout. There would be no parking. So
I'm all for that.
And here's through the curve. We would have bike lanes on both sides. So remove 157, keep 121. And so, total, Bradley, Fairview, Green, Amber, Broadway, Kinch, and Florida, a total removal of 394 spaces and a total remaining of 251 spaces. Does anybody have any questions on those streets?
I have another question.
Uh-huh.
For that Florida one by Thomas Paine, are there any lights incorporated in your Safe Routes program?
Street lighting?
Yeah. So I'm always worried when you go around that curve. There's frequently people standing in the street, in the dark, in black clothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice to have lighting, but Safe Routes to School grants are like $250,000, I think, maximum, and we're talking about walking to school, and you don't usually need lights to walk to school, so I don't think it would fly for a Safe Routes to School grant. Any other questions? Did you have a question, Gary?
Mentioning how many remove, how many are going to stay, and then also is important, and then how much they're used. But it might also be nice to say, what's the most inconvenience that any person is going to be?
Yeah.
And if the whole thing is they may have to walk across the street, that means something. If they have to go 6 blocks, then that's something
Right.
different. But that's just another metric that you might want to.
When we did the Philo, the removing on Ray Street from Pennsylvania to Montclair, Philo from Pennsylvania to Washington, and Washington from Vine to Philo, which is what we just did. This was a traffic commission for November 24th, 2009. We went to the meeting, and we also took aerial photos of a large area to show people, okay, well, you can come over to this street, or you can come over to this street, or there's parking on this street, and there's parking on both sides of this street and one side of this street. So we did give them options of where they could park. So with just to let you know, on the Ray Street, we ended up removing 22 spaces. And this is the kind of memo that I wrote. So we had watched parking from February to August of 2009. The most number of cars we saw parked in those 22 available spaces at one time was 4, which is 18% parking occupancy. And all those were parked up at Florida, and we believe they were commuters to the university. There was one particular car that parked there every day that we think rode the bus onto campus. And then as you got closer to the high school, it was all high school students. So we just weren't really, we felt the bike lanes were more important than providing free parking to high school students.
Well, but the parking for high school students is going to be a problem to start blocking it up there.
Maybe they can start biking to school or riding the bus. Yeah, I know. I don't have high school kids yet.
But
Gary?
One other thing that you might, when the issue came up at the city council about moving from Washington, there was some discussion. I remember Heather Stevenson had something to say, and she said, this is a good idea. I think she said she or her mother drives around there and they can't see around the corners. And she said, take the parking away. It's going to be safer and easier to see.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to consider in terms of safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other nice thing about like the arterials, removing the parking like Washington Street, is that when we have a snowy winter like we did this past year, there's nobody parked on the street, and then the plows can go right down the street and plow all the street off, and there's nobody parked on. Because we don't have any snow routes in Urbana. So you can park on any street, anytime, no matter how much snow is on the street.
But I think Jerry's point is good, who would be inconvenienced, how far away would they have to park?
Yeah.
Philo, we removed 25 spaces, and the most we saw again at any one time was 4, which is 16% parking occupancy. And on Washington, there were 30 available spaces. The most we saw was 7, so that was a little bit higher, but that was 23%. And council vote, or traffic commission recommended to council that the parking be removed, and council approved it. So all that parking has been removed, and the Philo Road bike lanes will be striped yet this spring to finish the rest from Pennsylvania to Washington, which will connect to the Washington bike lanes. And then we've already removed the parking on Main Street as well, from Grove to Glover, which will be part of, we got an ITEP grant for that. Actually, I don't know if this has ever gone, I don't think this has actually ever gone to council, but Main Street, Grove to Glover. We would remove the parking on the south side, and we would keep the parking on the north side. And we already took this to Traffic Commission, and we've just never, because we did it, we applied for the Main Street grant twice, 2008 and 2010. In 2008, we went to Traffic Commission to get the parking removed, and it was all, we were going to go to council if we got the grant. Well, we didn't get the grant, so there's no reason to remove the parking. Well, now we have gotten the grant, so if we implement it next year, then Traffic Commission would go ahead and make the recommendation to council, and then council would vote on it. But we had, I think, we had one person that was opposed to that. They own the business next to the Collins gas station. It's been like a barber shop and I think an air conditioning place and a couple other things, and he wanted the parking on his side of the street for customers, but I don't think there's actually anything in there anymore. And they have off-street parking as well.
Yeah, I would add that I think Gary Seco's points are good, and that obviously we would have the huge public engagement, sending letters,
Yes.
everything like last time. And I would, we'll definitely like notify the commission if we hear back about the Safe Route to School grant, and if we are going to proceed, and let you know the meeting dates of the traffic commission and the council meeting. I would encourage people strongly to attend, because especially at those meetings and at open houses like that, when residents are coming and looking at the maps, it's really a good time for conversation about how to safely, walk and bike, and the balance and trade-off. And it was really good dialogue to explain to people that some of them who didn't want to lose their parking space right in front of their door. It really helped when we could go to those meetings and say, we considered parking removals, and we planned, the bike master plan process took into account that we really wanted to avoid having to lose as much parking, and minimize the amount of parking impact, and that there are still a few places we had to impact parking, and this is one of them, and we've done studies and looked at how many people park on both sides, and just to even explain to people that we took all that into account helped, and to have a dialogue about, the fact that our streets need to sort of be complete streets where we try to provide for a mix of things and balance all this well, and we're doing our best to encourage walking and biking, and at the same time make it easy for people to drive and park, and that it's a trade-off of how to use the pavement and how to allocate our resources. So just having those conversations and having people who understood biking and walking at those meetings really helped. I'll definitely send out dates if we're going to go ahead with any of these soon, so that you all can come to those meetings and be part of the dialogue.
And we took it to Traffic Commission, the Kinch, Florida, and Fairview. We took those already to Traffic Commission once before we submitted our Safe Routes to School grant, and we had 3 people come. 2 of the men, as soon as they found out that the parking wasn't going to be impacted on their side of the street, they just left. And then the other one was a former city employee who I think just wanted to argue with me. So.
Another idea, when it comes to Broadway and the high school, wouldn't it be nice to provide some super well-covered bike parking, secure facilities for the high school and middle school at the same time, so that we...
I'll tell you, as part of the Safe Routes to School grant, we applied for new racks at all of the schools. Now,
Mhm.
high school doesn't, you can't use
Right,
Safe Routes to
'cause
School money at
that's-
high school. But one of the places we applied for new racks would be like at the aquatic center,
Mhm.
which we consider to be the middle school, and
Yeah.
it could be the high school,
Yeah.
and that's semi-covered. And then the middle school has some nice covered parking on the southeast corner, and kind of at the northeast corner too. They have some nice covered parking. I don't know where the bike parking for the high school is, but we wouldn't be able to use Safe Routes to School money
Right,
for
I
that.
realize that, but just.
But
yeah.
maybe the school district was putting in bike racks at some of the schools, so maybe if they get new racks at all of the schools, then they can focus on just putting in new racks at the high school.
Mhm.
Put all their money towards the high school. But yeah, that would be great. So that's all I have for A.
Okay, any final questions on that topic? Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Next tonight, we have some information about the Bike Master Plan update, or at least
Well-
some initial conversation about it.
We said we were going to update the plan in 5 years, and this year is just the third year, so I think that it will be probably updated in the next year. I will not be the one working on it. Probably whoever takes my place at the city will be the person that will be working on it. I know that Regional Planning Commission has given us a scope of services to do the update. We don't have a cost, so that would have to be budgeted in, but I would say that that'll probably happen in the next year or two. There are a lot of things that have happened, mostly being the shared lane markings or the sharrows. We just briefly touched on them in the Bike Master Plan. I think we'd like to lay out some more specific locations for those. So like we had 3 goals in the Bike Master Plan. The 2008 version was to increase bicycle mode share in Urbana for all trip purposes by 50% in the next 5 years. So we would need to do some counts or some kind of survey to determine that. Achieve a bicycle-friendly community award through the League of American Bicyclists. We did achieve that. So I would imagine that maybe the next goal would be the next level, because we didn't even say bronze. We just said award, and I think we would say probably silver in the goal. And then the third goal was to substantially expand the bicycle network, and I would say that we have increased it quite a bit. I don't know what the definition or anybody's definition of substantially is, but we do have quite a bit, a lot more bike lanes than we had when we started the project. So I was just going to go to the implementation chapter of the Bike Master Plan and look at, it's broken out by, we have by treatment, by year, I think, and by agency, by time frame and by agency. I'm going to go through it by treatment. And a lot of these we just talked about. So it broken down by bike lanes. We have Amber Lane, which, like I said, maybe could get done yet this year. Not exactly sure what that would be otherwise. Bradley Avenue would go with a Champaign project, so there's no real plan for that. Broadway Avenue, I could see that happening in the next 2 to 3 years with a resurfacing project. Fairview Avenue and Florida Avenue could happen next year if we get this Safe Routes to School grant. Goodwin Avenue from Springfield to Gregory, we've done that. The Green Street from Race Street to Busey, which is the section we talked about. That is in, that was in the that was in the 10+ year. So I would say that the next round of transportation enhancement grants, we would probably apply for that. So that would probably be more on the 5+ year. And then the Green Street in the section on campus, I have no idea what the plan is for that.
We are considering including it in a fall application for the Very Small Starts grant program. That is a transit program dealing with the infrastructure for rapid transit, high frequency routes. So it's we're just getting into the discussions about that.
And that would probably be an issue that would go to the CATS group, the Campus Area Transportation Study, and there would be a lot of discussion on what the cross-section of the street would be, and so that could be a little ways out.
And the CATS group is, not to get off topic too much, but we are, before we make any decisions about major infrastructure changes in the university district, we'd like to get an updated traffic circulation study. And we can't do that until we finalize the mode share module of the travel demand model. And we did get that all hooked up, but it wasn't calibrated correctly for campus because campus is so complex. And actually, it was today that we sent out a survey to about 3,000 or 4,000 people on campus asking for specific data information, origin, destination, so we can do that first step and then the next and the next. And if you got one of those emails, please respond.
I did not. I got the MTD survey last night, but I did not get the other one.
That was between Bright and,
Busey. We have it,
Bright and Busey.
which Busey is just a block east of Lincoln. Because whenever we would do that, we would probably go through the intersection.
A master plan for that stretch? I mean, is there a
There
road
is
diet?
not. It was in CATS 2, I believe, but there was nothing, it really, there wasn't much of a plan.
I mean, there was an underground parking lot at some point, but that was Burdal, I think.
It's not currently on any project list.
Okay. And it
So
didn't
there
come up
are-
with any of the bike plan or the other consultants that we've had to look at?
The bike plan
The bike
shows-
plan calls
shows
for bike lanes.
But there's a question of, would you have a shared bus bike lane, since it's
Okay.
4-lane stretch in just that area? Would we change the medians and where the lights are? There's all kinds of.
Yeah, would you take out the medians, bring in all the curbs, go down to a 3-lane cross-section, go down to 2 lanes? Where would
Engineering
you put the bike
detail
lanes? Where would you put the
questions.
bus lanes? There's so many options with that street. Or do you just keep the curbs where they are? Move the I don't know. There's just like a million different options. Gregory Street from Illinois Street to Oregon, that's on campus right along Cranor. That's a university city cooperation project, and we're already getting $300,000 out of the university, so I don't see that project happening anytime in the immediate future, but the plans are done, essentially. Illinois Street from Vine Street to Ray Street is downtown. I think that if we get these bike lanes going down Main Street with the road diet downtown, then we would start doing the rest of the streets, Ray Street and Illinois Street, and those would probably be TIF funds, so we'd have to check what the availability of the TIF funding is. We had that in the 0 to 5 year. Kent Street would be with the Safe Routes to School, so possibly next year or the following year. The Main Street bike lanes will be hopefully next year. We're, one of the last things I'm going to be doing is putting together an RFP to hire 2 consultants, one to do the downtown bike lanes and road diet, and one to do the bike lanes with the ITEP grant that we got. So depending on how quickly they can put things together, and because the ITEP grants are federal funds, and you have to go through IDOT and do a lot of paperwork, hopefully those things will be done next year. Oregon Street from Lincoln to Goodwin, again, that's a campus project, and that would have to be a joint project, so whenever we both have funding again. Philo Road, bike
The
lane.
university,
What?
we did send a notice to Urbana that should be a city project, so that's an open conversation.
Oh, okay.
Considering we think it's closed and you think it's open, we need to discuss it.
Philo Road, we're going to do here as soon as the weather stops raining and the street dries up. Ray Street would be a downtown section that would go with anything else that was downtown. Washington Street we did this year, and I don't know why we have Wright Street from Springfield to Armory, because that's not us. That would be Morgan's project at the university. So we did do Philo Road, we did Ray Street, we did Washington Street, we did Goodwin Avenue, and maybe a handful in the next 5 years, and then some of them 5+ years out. The next section would be bike routes, and I don't have my list from the Safe Routes to School project, but I can tell you that we haven't done any bike routes, and that's going to be a part of the master plan update as well, because while we had bike routes in the plan, since that, then the new MUTCD came out, which gives new signage for bike routes, which gives destination, direction, and distance. And so that's one of the things I think that'll really be covered in the new bike master plan is what those, like, when we have bike routes, what are our destinations going to be? And then once we have destinations, then I think we can determine where those signs are going to be. And so we have a lot of the bike routes. I would say probably 50% of the bike routes would be implemented as part of the Safe Routes to School grant. But again, we have to go back to what we have to pick destinations, and that's got to be decided at some level. And I don't know, we would probably have a steering committee again for the bike master plan and talk about all that stuff. But there will start to be, hopefully if we get this Safe Routes to School grant, we will start implementing bike routes here next year possibly, if not the following year. The shared bike parking lanes, there were 2 of those, Anderson Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. Those would also be implemented as part of the Safe Routes to School project, so that would be hopefully next year. We haven't done any of the share the road signage, and those were all kind of out in what I'm going to call the country, so out on Airport Road and Country Club Road and High Cross Road, Future Olympian Drive, Perkins Road. And the reason we haven't done any of those is we're really trying to focus on getting the stuff done in town, and then we'll move out onto the outskirts of the town. So we don't have any share the road signage in place yet. And then the last type would be shared use paths or side paths. And a lot of those would be done with projects. So, for example, when Florida Avenue goes through, it ends right now at, what? No. Oglethorpe? I know, it's Abercorn. It's Abercorn. Yeah. And so when that street goes all the way through to High Cross Road, that side path would be constructed. We did the Windsor Road side path that goes all the way out to High Cross Road. And then the High Cross Road bike path is going to be built up to Po' Boys. Right now we're going through easements, so if they can get all the easements, then they will build that. But the other ones are really mostly associated with street reconstruction. So like Future Olympian Drive would have a side path on it.
Question about the Po' Boys one.
Uh-huh.
Will that'll actually go up to the street that goes into the Stone Creek area, or will
It'll go all the way to Windsor Road, and it'll connect to the Windsor Road path.
Okay.
And, yeah,
So
and
I
on the
guess
north.
I was looking for what's the north end. I thought it was going to stop at Po' Boys
It
on
is.
the north
Yeah.
end.
It is, for now.
So it passes all of the Stone Creek, and is it Water's Edge or the Stone
Yeah,
Creek
Water's Edge, I
and the
think.
other little development that's like duplexes or whatever that's tucked in right there. It
And
passes all of
It
that.
gets over the, whatever that is.
It gets over the big
The
drainage ditch, and it gets to Po' Boys, and it stops at the Po' Boys
Parking, yeah,
entrance
it's
parking
on the
lot.
I'm sorry, I thought Po' Boys was south of the entrance to Stone Creek, but I must be
I
wrong.
think it's
Must be
north.
No, it's north. It's
Of all
north
the
right away.
residential neighborhoods.
I'm not sure if Po' Boys is, it might even be north of what Florida would be extended. I'm not exactly positive where that is. No? Okay. Okay. Well, that's where it would go for now. So, some of the projects we had way out in the 10+ would be the rail to trails, and those are still way out because the rails are still active. So as far as side paths, we did build that big long one on Windsor Road, and we will do the big one on Florida, and we'll do the one on High Cross Road. Those are probably our biggest ones. And working on doing the Lenore Adams path. I don't know if you know where that is, but it's kind of like north of Thomas Paine School. Lenore comes down, and there's right-of-way through to Adams, but the street doesn't go through, but there's a big goat path through there because everybody walks through there. So we would like to put a path through there, and that we have CDBG money, which is, what is that? It's like community...
Community Development Block
Development
Grant.
Block Grant.
It's federal, chunks of federal funding.
And you use it to make improvements for neighborhoods, and the neighborhood would like to see this. So that might get constructed yet this year. possibly, because it would be done with operations, Public Works operations staff is the idea. So, that's my quick update of the bike master plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Gary?
Uh-huh.
Has there been any thought of what's happening with the Lincoln connection to Olympian? Have they even talked about the cross-section, or are they just?
I have
Very
no
preliminary.
idea. I'm not really involved with Lincoln and Olympian at all.
Yeah, okay.
All I've heard is that once the county and all the governments sign off on the project, which for the Lincoln portion is an agreement between the county and Urbana that is probably now going to take into May to get finalized. Once that happens and the engineering firms are then retained to really do the next step of doing the engineering of the roadway, that's where the conversation will then continue, because there was a pretty big community conversation about the cross section, the ditches, whether there's sidewalks or wide sidewalks for Olympian. That conversation would then be kind of extended and come to some final conclusion points where the group would make recommendations based on all that public input about, now that they've heard all that input, what are they actually recommending be constructed in this phase? Would there be sidewalks? Would there be 2 lanes? Would there be 2 embankments? All those questions. And so they would present a recommendation that would then come to the governments involved. But those recommendations from the engineers, I think, will not happen until all the governments take the next step to move forward on the project. So I bet if that happens in May, that then we'll be hearing more about the project again.
Okay.
Um,
Ready for the next item?
Yep.
It's really more than just an announcement. Tuesday, May 3rd is CU Bike to Work and School Day. I'm just on the website, cubiketowork.com. It's from 7 to 10 a.m. on that day. There will be 10 bike stations, which I think are listed down here, yeah. Downtown Urbana, downtown Champaign, campus, the Campus Bike Project, Searcy, East Urbana at Brookins, is that just for Brookins people? It's open for everybody. Parkland College in Savoy at Wolfram Research, and then the Urbana middle and high schools are actually just for middle and high school kids, although I'm taking my kids there. So, if you want to check out more, just go to cubiketowork.com. Rebecca is not here tonight because she is at this Bike Commuting 101 class at the Urbana Free Library. And then this Saturday, which I actually have also an announcement, it's they're actually all this week, they're celebrating Earth Week at Common Ground. And there's a Bike to Work Day info booth that will be outside from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I guess if it's nice outside.
That didn't make the flyer. That's like the main event.
It might be on the Common Ground website.
Regarding the info booth, one of the things that we think people would be interested in getting help with ahead of time is how to plan their route. And so if you stop by one of these info booths, or even probably the skills workshop, then you can talk with someone who is familiar with the bike map and get some help with selecting your route if you have not ridden to work before or want help with the map.
And if you also want to do a little preparation, there's a basic bicycle skills workshop, which, Gary, are you teaching that? Co-teaching?
Yes.
Gary is co-teaching on Monday, April 25th. That's a Common Ground as well, isn't it?
No,
Oh, it's the Urbana
Okay.
Library. Okay, it's at the library. It's sponsored by the co-op because it's $2.50 to go if you are an owner in the food co-op, and $5 if you're a non-owner. And that is from 5:30 to 8 p.m. And Gary and Cynthia and Carl are all co-teaching that.
Great.
And let's
And
see.
there is a website to sign up for this, for bike and
Yep.
walk to school
So you can
and work
pre-register
day.
online
Mhm.
right here. If you can call this number to get it translated to Spanish if you want. So they're asking
Mhm.
you where you start, just to get an idea, and then where you're going. And your organization, because some companies are doing workplace challenges. And so your destination, and then if you want to stop at a bike station, list that there, because there will be T-shirts, tote bags, and more. So there'll be like juice and coffee and snacks and stuff like that. So
Right.
we want to have an idea of how many people are coming to each station. And it's all
There's-
first come, first serve.
There's one incentive per person, and there's a smaller number of T-shirts this year because there are some other neat gifts as well, but you have to select which one you
Yeah.
want.
You don't get a T-shirt and a tote bag.
Right.
You can pick one or the other. And then just some, have you ever biked to work before? Did you participate last year? How'd you hear about it? How do you usually get to work? And how could you improve your bike commute? And any suggestions? So it's a really simple, easy way to pre-register, and I encourage everybody to participate.
Has anyone here signed up for it yet? And if you've signed up, I've signed up. Okay. Okay, so if you haven't, the website is cubiketowork.com, and it really seriously takes 60 seconds kind of thing to... Bike to retirement
and
activities.
school, you could bike to school.
Okay.
I'll also just say that we had a lot of participating agencies in getting this put together, so it's been really good. This is the second year that we've tried to do it as a large community effort, and it's been great.
There's the
There's-
agencies, and then there are a lot of companies as
Well,
well. that are-
right, but it's like there must be 15 different organizations that are participating in the setting up of this event this time. So, yeah.
Great.
And there are some commercials, which we can't watch here, Gary. And, but you can go online maybe at home and see the commercials. They're also on WILL.
And
you
I
can
think-
catch them on WILL, you can catch them on UPTV, on CGTV, and they're running commercial ads, radio commercials.
And I even think Rebecca was interviewed today on AM 580.
Oh, really? And,
on maybe
I
Afternoon
thought so.
Magazine or whatever.
oh, maybe. I don't know. I think this is just going to jam up. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's
May
too
3rd
slow.
is Bike to Work and School Day.
Mhm.
And yeah, please register, help spread the word. I know I posted it on, if you post the link to your friends or whatever on your Facebook page, just so people register in advance, it really helps to know how many people are coming.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you're on Facebook, to join Bike Urbana too. 'Cause then you can find out all the biking stuff in Urbana on that page.
Okay, that is it for new business. We don't have any old business, but we have a number of announcements
Yes.
and also
So these kind of all
Michelle's
lead in, which I
grant
kind of already
topic.
just talked about.
Yeah.
Earth Week on April 23rd at Common Ground with Gary and his jazz cycle, and a lot of information about biking at Common Ground. And then the April 25th Basic Bicycling Skills Workshop, which was on the CU biketowork.com website. May 3rd being Bike to Work and School Day. May 21st, CU Safe Routes to School is hosting a bike rodeo at the market at the square, and they need volunteers. You don't have to have any experience with biking or anything. All you have to do is show up and be nice to kids. So if you can volunteer, please let me know, or let Rose or Cynthia know. Any amount of time. It will run from 9 to noon. It will be over by Concord Cleaners. It's going to be across the street now, because the market has expanded, and the area along the north side that used to be all of the organizations, that's all like sellers now, or vendors. Vendors, that's the word I'm looking for. So all the organizations are going to be on Walnut Street now, and so that there's no space for the bike rodeo anymore, and anything, blood drives, whatever the things they have. So we will be across the street at across Illinois Street by Concord Cleaners, which is actually a nice space. It's a little squarer and not quite so long and thin, and hopefully, and then we don't have people like walking through like we have always had in the past. So if you can help out with that, that would be fantastic. And then also on June 4th is Playing It Safe. It's a huge safety event on the fairgrounds. And it's put on by Carl. and they want, they always request a bike rodeo and helmets, fittings, and sales. And this is a really, really big event. Gets I think thousands of people that go through it. And so they need a lot of volunteers. So if you can volunteer, or if you know anybody, maybe you know a group of people that are looking to do some volunteering. Again, you don't have to have any experience. You just come and stand at a station. And anytime you can, if you can do 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours or whatever you can do, that would be very helpful. I don't know the hours of that, and it's usually probably like a 9 to 2 kind of event, I think, 10 to 2, something like that. So if you can help out, that would be great. And I think that's all my events.
So the two events that need volunteers the most are the bike rodeo on May 21 and Playing It Safe on June 4.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Morgan? We're seeking volunteers for Bike to Work Day, but if we don't get enough, then I might call on some of the people here.
Yeah,
as well.
Definitely. Okay.
And then
Michelle,
had
you
another.
had a grant topic. If you can describe the opportunity here.
Sure. The UI Wellness Center is considering applying for a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation grant, which is called a Health Impact Project, Advancing Smarter Policies for Healthier Communities. And basically, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has a few core target areas that they like to fund, and one of their current interests is really at looking at how policy impacts health. So not just looking at individual behavior change, but what can communities do to put in policies that really support healthful behaviors. So this might be, in terms of things that might impact the work that this commission does and the work that I do on campus, it might include things like a policy that would incentivize campus employees to be physically active, or a policy that would require buildings to institute high visibility signage to encourage people to take instead of elevators, and to beautify and make the stairways more accessible and easier to get into. It could require, for instance, a policy that if someone was going to register a car or a bicycle on the campus, that they would have to go through a 15-minute tutorial on safety and sharing the road. It could be any number of things. So right now, I'm talking with people on the campus and the community to kind of determine what would be the most impactful policy that we could write a proposal to get one of these grants to study. The brief proposals are due June 1st, and brief proposals are pretty brief, but we have to have a pretty good idea of what it is that we're going to go for even to submit that. And then if we're chosen to submit a final proposal, those are due in September, so there'd be a couple months to really work at pulling the plan together. I apologize for being kind of vague about this because I don't know what it is that, from the campus perspective, we're really thinking about applying for, but I thought I would open up to this group for ideas and also just put it out there that it would be great if maybe there's some way that we could partner on this together, or if maybe we could get a letter of support from you to promote what it is that we're trying to do.
Would you want the letter of support for the June 1st application?
I think so.
Okay, then we should vote tonight, I would say, while we have people here.
Yeah.
I can send anybody that wants information. There's electronic
I guess
call
we
for
can vote in
proposals
May,
that I
too.
can send out to people if you want more information, or
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Officially, yeah, we shouldn't vote on things that weren't on the agenda. So
Okay, we can put it on next
we
month's
can
agenda.
we can make sure
We
to
are
have a May
meeting in
meeting.
so.
Okay. Oh, I should
No
make one
problem.
other comment. Because Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has already funded so many things that have to do strictly with transportation, they have made a point of saying they will not fund grant proposals that are strictly about transportation. It doesn't mean that it can't include transportation, particularly if it's something that impacts other things like recreation or safety as well, but it can't be just a transportation grant.
There are so many good ideas that come to mind. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the city could maybe help with things like, encouraging private employers or other people to have stairwells that are,
Mhm.
encourage signs that encourage people to use stairwells and things rather than
Mhm.
elevators. But in terms of public transportation too, I wonder if one thing we could help do is I don't know, like some of the stuff, Gary, that you talk about sometimes where, things like making maps or making kind of destination, we probably couldn't do signage as part of it, but other ways of getting the word out about, this end of campus is a 5-minute walk from that end of campus, or you could be there by now even if you were walking or biking, and sort of making it, doing some educational campaigns to make it really clear how you can get around the core part of this town by walking or biking so quickly and easily, and that if the weather's bad, you can always ride the bus, or if you need to go somewhere else, you can always use a zip car, and just sort of promoting the ease and convenience of that, and the distance and the walk and bike times. I don't know, that's something that seems like it would tie together all of our bike networks and our other modes.
Yeah, it could definitely include that kind of thing. It has to be policy. It has to be a policy. So it might be a policy that the campus and the cities of Champaign and Urbana enter into together, that they will embark upon an informational campaign to share information about walking and cycling in all 3 areas.
So forgive me if I'm missing something, but how does a policy need funding?
Well, it's not they aren't going to fund a policy. They will fund a study that looks at the impact of the policy. There's a particular type of study called a health impact assessment, and they will fund a health impact assessment that would look at how a particular policy would impact a community on a number of levels, how it would impact the health of the citizens, but also, for instance, how it might impact the budget or the financial solvency of a city or community.
So it could do a study that would help us decide whether or not to take up that policy.
Yes.
So there's some policy questions for campus, like if we had a program that helped people find carpool matches. There are significant concerns about the liability if 2 people match up and one person turns out to be a maniac of some kind, right? And so there's a pushback for policy from that. Also, there's a policy question about if we provided bicycle sharing and allowed our employees to use bicycles as employees, what would be the risk and the financial requirements and the other policy changes we would need in order to allow that in our current system? And so those might be.
And those are the kinds of things that a health impact assessment would look at. To me, it's an opportunity from the campus perspective, and I would think also from a community perspective, for us to take an issue that's important to us that we would like to see moved forward and do a really high-quality study of the impact of it so that we can then take it to leadership and say, this is not just my opinion as the UI Wellness Director, Jennifer's opinion as the city engineer. We've done a very well-crafted study on this, and this is what the impact on this community would be if we instituted this policy.
Just to say them before I forget, there's a policy on campus that you cannot bring bicycles into buildings. And from the transportation perspective, I don't think that policy is a good policy. And so it'd be interesting to look at that because the people who are told they can't bring a bicycle inside then may decide to drive instead. So there's an issue there.
Especially even in one's own private dorm room. When I've rented this dorm room and then they tell me, I have to leave my bike outside overnight in the rain where it can get destroyed and vandalized. It's my room. Can't I bring my bike into my room? Well, the policy currently says no, and that's been a large discussion.
And the other one I frequently think about is what happens if we encourage people to bicycle or walk or take the bus and then they don't get to work exactly at 8:30 because some unknown happens.
Well, that could be part of a policy. There could be a policy that would support and incentivize employees to bicycle or walk by providing the following: flex time, all kinds of, maybe some kind of financial incentive, bike racks, a place to shower. I mean, there could be any number of things that could be instituted, but it has to be crafted as it's not for programming, it's for to study a policy.
It that you'd have to implement the policy.
Well, I mean, they've made it pretty clear is that they don't want somebody to do a study just to do a study. So there has to be some evidence that the entity has a true interest in finding out about the impact of the policy, and that there's a good possibility that if the study shows that the policy would have strong positive impact, that it would be implemented.
Because I was wondering, like with the bicycles in dorm rooms, this is a major problem on campus. And I went to a conference at Durango, Colorado, several years ago, Fort Lewis College. I walked into the dorm room where I was staying for the conference, and there were bicycle racks on the walls in the dorm room. Now, this is mountain bike heaven, so it makes sense. So, and I inquired, and there's a lot of universities that allow them in. So this might be a way where, if you got something like this, that housing might be encouraged to try this in one residence for one semester or 1 year,
Right.
and then they could back out if it didn't work out. It might be a way to just to get a foot in the door on something
Right.
like that. I think that could have a really major impact on campus. And we're also, for bicycle-friendly campus, we're going to try to do that. And I don't know if that's a specific category, but there's something about parking. But that would be my preference. Try that.
And you said it was health impacts, but it could also include economic impacts?
Yes. Primarily, it looks at health impact, but it looks at other impact on the community. So, we might be able to determine if it would have a positive financial impact on the campus or on the community. It could look at impact, for instance, of how many people might be drawn to move to the community. I mean, there are any number of things that it could look at. So it's not just health in terms of physical health of the body, but health of the community.
Well, is there a link or a place if people are interested in reading more as kind of stewing on what possible synergies or what possible policies could be considered, that they could read up on it and email you further ideas in the coming week or two?
Yes. It's www.healthimpactproject.org.
Healthimpactproject.org. Great. Okay. And I think everybody here has Michelle's email. Is that okay? If people
Sure
have ideas,
is.
we could email
Yep.
you.
Did you send that to me?
I sure can.
No, you did, didn't you?
I did. I emailed you the call for proposals.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we could, if it's a smallish attachment, we could even send that around to the group. Okay, great. Well, we can, Audrey. No, I was going to say we could certainly, I would think, put that on the agenda next time and, officially give you a letter of support
Okay.
and say that we want to help participate. I think, depending on the project, we may be able to help with other steps too.
Right.
And, having the city of Urbana really be a partner in helping do the study or helping implement a policy on our part of town, or helping get volunteers to do something if something needs to be done. So, so I guess I encourage everybody to think about possible projects or policies that could be part of the grant project and see how else we can help besides just a letter.
Okay, that would be phenomenal. And before the next meeting, the Robert Johnson Foundation is holding 2 web conference calls for people who are interested in proposing, and I've registered for both of them. The first one will occur before our next meeting, so I'll have more information by the next meeting. And I'm also talking with the director of the Foundation Relations Office at the campus, and she thinks that we could put something together that's competitive. This will be, many people will be applying for this. I think they're only giving 8 grants, and it's been widely publicized. So, but she feels that we could be competitive.
Yeah.
What was the website?
Healthimpact.org.
Health Impact Project?
I'm sorry, healthimpactproject.org.
Okay.
Audrey, did you have a comment?
Just talking about to remind people that the Illinois Marathon is happening April 30th, and the impacts of that are already evident. You see tons of people running in preparation
gosh.
already. And they're also saying the economic impact is really incredible this year. So just to put in a word for transportation on foot,
Right.
this has been pretty bicycle-oriented.
And the 5K is Friday night.
Right.
So the campus route is impacted Friday from 5:30 or 5 or 5:30 until like 7:30 that day, the 29th.
It is?
Oh.
Yep.
Huh.
from Urbana to the 11 o'clock shuttle on Saturday.
Just go University.
You can buy,
Yeah.
but you can't Urbana
Sure
for
you
like
can,
2
yes
hours.
you can.
If-
You need to go, you need to
You
go
could-
north of Green Street when you're going east-west.
Mm.
Across the street.
You can cross Lincoln north of Green.
What?
You can cross Lincoln north of Green. You can go east-west on across Lincoln and Wright Street.
Across Green at Lincoln.
You have to be north of, you have to be north of Green to cross Lincoln.
Okay, but if you're
He's saying you
south
can't get
of
across Green.
You
You're-
can't leave for 2 hours.
Oh. If you live in the, because you live in the middle of the circular
Marathon.
path. Okay. Yeah, if you jog, if you jog, you can.
Yeah, we,
The last open closes at 6:30,
Uh-huh.
and the first open is at like 9:30. 2 hours later.
I think one thing we did one year was parked our car. We knew the marathon was happening, and so we just got up that morning and parked our car on the outside of the circular, out on the outside of the track, so that we could just walk a couple blocks and hop in our car if we needed to use it.
Jennifer, why don't you put it on the one with all of them?
This is just Urbana.
Oh, here's Jennifer put the map on the screen.
So you live in here somewhere.
This is Urbana, but this is just either the marathon or the half.
This is a half.
But if you,
So if you
No,
live
this is the
in,
marathon.
if you
It's
live
just,
inside that,
It's just Urbana.
okay.
Right. See that, this page is Champaign. Page 1 is
Yeah.
Champaign. Page 2 is Urbana.
Yeah. So yeah, if you live near the route, you could just park your car on the other side of the route. But yeah, otherwise you're right. You need to wait for a gap depending on whether there's a huge crowd of runners right at that moment.
it's also starting earlier this year. It's starting at, the first one's 6:59, and the last one is 7:30. But you should be able to pulse through, other than between, in the heart of campus, you should be able to get through at least by 8:30.
Yeah, because
For most routes.
Up on Green Street,
Corrected, only 2 hours will you be shutting.
Right.
up on Green Street, you're at mile 2 and 3 and 4, so you got to head north to get out. Head north to get out, because this is 2 and 3 and 4 miles. Those will be done early.
People will have cleared that route.
Yeah, it's Green and Main
First.
Street. It won't be.
Yeah, when the bulk of people in this route are headed back on Green Street between mile 12 and 13,
Yeah, right here.
that's 8:45 in the morning. So really, it's going to clear out pretty quickly, except for the full marathon on the Champaign side.
Right.
Okay. We have one brief last topic. 1 second. Okay, Jennifer, because we didn't know if we would have a May meeting for sure or not, we wanted to give you a card and flowers and a little gift so you could go have a relaxing dinner at Silver Creek with your husband if you ever get a night off. And
you.
congratulate you, because we know your husband is graduating and we're sad to have you leave us, but you've done a huge service for biking and walking for like generations of people to be safer in our town. So thank you. Let's all give a round of applause. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 3 cheers for Jennifer. We have really enjoyed working with you. Oh yeah. We've really enjoyed getting.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Hi, Mike.
Come back and visit us.
You can always hire me. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, we are officially adjourned. Thanks, everybody.